Brent Venables, a lot of my friends don't have a lot of confidence in him. I did a live stream with my guy College Football with Sam, and we were talking about Oklahoma making the transition to the SEC, and he was like, he just doesn't believe in Brent Venables. And, I really don't understand why so many people are just so discouraged with Brent Venables after just one season. I mean, I get it that his defense was incredibly disappointing, and despite the fact that he didn't have the personnel to do ideally what he likes to do typically on defense, you don't expect to have one of the worst defenses in college football with a defensive-minded coach that has the resume of Brent Venables. You expect that defense to at least be a tad bit better than amongst the worst in college football. But I want to give my thoughts on, is Brent Venables in over his head at Oklahoma? Because I honestly don't believe that. I think that Brent Venables is a guy that, first of all, he's a really great recruiter. And if you're a really good recruiter, you're going to be able to assemble talent. And all talent alone, that can get you, if you have an ideal schedule, 3 or 4 wins right off the bat. Unless you're just a terrible head coach, which I don't believe that Brent Venables is. Even at worst, I think Brent Venables would be a below average coach that may underachieve more times than you would like. But you look at the fact that last season, you got to remember that his roster didn't really have a lot of depth. They had some injuries, especially at quarterback. They went into their rivalry matchup against Texas having to run Wildcat offense with Eric Gray. And listen, I love me some Eric Gray, big fan of him, but anytime you have to run your offense through him being your quarterback and the Wildcat offense, you know you're going to be in trouble. They got blown out by Texas in an embarrassing way. And then you look at the fact that it kind of was nothing they could do about it. You had no quarterback. So I don't really hold that completely over Brent Venables' head. Maybe I'm just one of those people that's just a tad bit more patient when it comes to coaches. I understand that not every coach goes into a situation like Brian Kelly or Lincoln Riley at USC and then they just completely are able to turn that thing around and get it going year one. And even though Brent Venables wasn't taking over a bad situation, it's like still when they lost Lincoln Riley, like that was a huge gut punch to that program. Like they had to kind of regather themselves. They had to take a couple of deep breaths and they had to kind of rechange some things. So for Brent Venables, he had to kind of rebuild the roster to his fashion without doing it in the way that Deion Sanders has, which is something that he kind of called out during Big 12 Media Days, but that's a topic for another day. And plus, he had to kind of recruit really hard, which he did a really good job at that. They had the 4th best recruiting class in America last year. And if you're going to be successful in the SEC, the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is that you have to be an elite recruiter. Dan Mullen wasn't an elite recruiter. He was a great X's and O's guy, but he just wasn't good at assembling talent and developing talent at a high level, really. Brent Venables, I think he's a great recruiter, and I think he's going to be a good talent developer. And then you look at him when it comes to game management. I don't really think I look at Brent Venables and I think that he's an awful game manager. He's one of those coaches that makes a lot of boneheaded decisions with the game on the line. You got to remember that this is somebody who's been on 2 championship caliber staffs. Clemson, Oklahoma, under Bob Stoops. So Brent Venables, I think he has good amount of experience being around those coaches and being on those staffs that he knows what you have to do and what you have to be able to build to have a program that's championship caliber. Now, how long is it going to take for Oklahoma to get to that level? We don't know, but I also like the fact that he's very charismatic. It seems like this is somebody that really gets his players to gravitate and play hard for him. So I don't think that Brent Venables is in over his head. I just think that 2022 was a little bit more unideal than what most people thought. And you got to remember that there were people who believed that Oklahoma could have been a 10-win football team last season. And maybe they could have if they didn't have the injuries that they dealt with, and Dylan Gabriel could have stayed fully healthy. But long term, I still trust Brent Venables. And there are some guys that I look at it year one and how they perform, and I just shake my head and I say it's not going to work. I don't look at Brent Venables in that way. I think that he does everything that you need in a good head coach, at least a head coach that can have you be in a sustainable program that can win you at least 8 games. You got to recruit well, which he's shown the ability to do. He has a really good staff. Jeff Lebby is one of the best offensive coordinators in college football right now. You got a really good quarterback starting for you in Dylan Gabriel. You also got a really good QB behind him that's going to be the future. And I do think that you're going to be able to get things figured out. You're really good in the transfer portal. It's like everything that Brent Venables needs to do so far in terms of roster construction, I think has been really solid. Now, game management, he probably can improve on some things, but I don't expect that defense to be as bad as what it was this season or what it was last season this year. You got to remember that even Dan Lanning, head coach of Oregon, was the DC on Kirby's staff for years. Oregon's defense wasn't good last year. So even he's making a transition, and he's a really respected defensive mind. Jim Knowles at Ohio State, really respected DC. He wasn't able to make things shake year one with the Buckeyes. So you got to give some of these defensive-minded coaches some time. Sometimes it takes a while to, implement the kind of defense that you want, because I think with offense allows you to freelance a little bit more. It allows you to improvise, because on offense, sometimes things break down. You got to think on the win, but with defense, you miss an assignment, it's wraps. So Brent Venables, I don't think he's in over his head. I do still really like the hire of Brent Venables. I think that Oklahoma is going to be way better this season than what they were last year. And then they probably should be able to get the 8 wins. They're going to be 5-0 most likely going into their game against Texas. The couple of games that they played before that, Arkansas State, SMU, Cincinnati, Iowa State, are all games that they should win. Iowa State, we don't know how they're going to look this year. They looked really bad last year. Post Brock Purdy. Cincinnati, I just don't think they're that good this year. They don't have a lot of talent. They don't have a lot of returning starters, and they don't have a lot of depth. SMU could be an interesting game. Brett Lashley and the Ponies, they've been really active in the transfer portal. They got a really talented offense, a really talented QB. So if their defense can improve a little bit, they could be a little scary. And in Arkansas State, you should be able to smash them. So I think Oklahoma should be 5-0. And then they enter Big 12 conference play. I think they can at least win 3 other conference games. I don't think you're going to have a disastrous season in Big 12 play like you did last year, getting blown out by TCU and losing to Texas Tech. So let me know what you guys think about Brent Venables down in the comment section down below. Do you guys still have faith in him as the head coach of Oklahoma football?